tonight where it's about sabotage. Guess what? It fits right into our wonderful presentation tonight. Welcome, welcome everybody. So it's going to be about sabotage to empowerment. And I think we're still going to be okay on time for the Ultimate Healer class afterwards. But I thought that this would be, it came to me that this would be something that would be of great value, since we all do this to ourselves in different ways. From sabotage to empowerment. Finding your super suit. That's the idea behind this. This is our objectives. It's how to identify sabotage, how to capture the energy, and how to release it. Sounds simple, right? No problems. Everybody's got it? With opposition comes empowerment. You know, a friend of mine said that the other day, and I just was amazed at the simplicity of that statement. With opposition comes empowerment. In other words, if you don't have any kind of opposition, you're really not going to be able to proceed. It's like trees that are planted and they don't have a good root system. Then what happens is the wind comes along, and sure enough, those trees all blow over real simply. The difference between hemlock trees and fir trees. Up there in the state of Washington, we have some great big trees back there. Some of them were 4 foot through the center. And my dad, I have 30 acres up there. And after a big storm, we would walk back there to see who survived. When we have these objectives, a lot of times what we want to do is we want to identify the sabotage and then understand that maybe this is one of those blessings in disguise. You've heard of the game of life, right? It's a fun game. When we play it, we expect to land on different little squares on here that tell us that we have suffered some kind of catastrophe, or maybe we've got a windfall of some kind. It's a fun game that everybody, I think, pretty much enjoys playing. We did with my kids. But it helps us when we understand, remembering what the purpose of life is. We talked about that when we talked about generations, where we've had many different opportunities to earn the right to come to this earth. One of the objectives that we came for was to be tested, believe it or not. And of course, one of the testings is, as we learn, how do we deal with the things that we learn in life? Another objective that we accomplish here is to receive a physical body. But choice is always a really, really big thing, that when we come here, we have free agency. Well, it's not really free, but we have agency to choose. There's always a consequence. It can be either a good consequence or a bad consequence. So our choices do make a difference. I had a talk that I heard on Sunday, and they talked about how when you pray, you pray about a situation in your life. When you have a problem that you perceive to be an issue or a block or a problem, God will come in and He will create a corrective lens, if we ask Him to, or that could be the Holy Ghost or whatever you want to call it, to help us see the reality of a situation. And so when these lenses are there, or filters that we create ourselves, we see things differently than we did before. Now, a lot of you have heard this story of the two sisters, the two Jewish sisters. I use this quite frequently when we come up on my chart, and it says that there is blessings from trials. In their particular trial, when they were in World War II, they were interned into one of the concentration camps, and the barracks that they stayed in, those two sisters, was infested with lice. It was just horrible. They just felt so plagued that they just couldn't get away from the lice. At the end of the internment, when the Allies came through and freed them, that's when their actual blessing came out. Apparently, all the other women's barracks had been continually attacked from the guards. The guards had gone in and molested the women. But because of the lice, they were left alone, because the guards didn't want the lice. So there's a blessing in disguise, you might say, that came. And what happened was there was a paradigm shift. Let me give you another real quick example. A friend of mine was on a bus riding along there. They stopped in front of this bus stop, and a man and three children jumped on the bus. Well, the kids just started running all over the bus. The dad, he just stood there and he was kind of standing there holding the pole, and he didn't even seem to recognize the fact that his kids were causing problems. And so it was quite annoying, and you could tell that the other passengers were becoming annoyed. Well, my friend was sitting close enough to this man. He said, you know, your kids are really causing a problem. Maybe you need to control them or a little bit better, make them sit down or something. And the dad looked up and he's like, it was the first time he'd seen my friend, and he said, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I guess you're right. So they just lost their mother. We just came from the hospital. Boom, paradigm shift. Now, did you all feel that? So that's the same type of thing. When we look at some of the obstacles or the sabotage that we have, that's what's happening. Kind of like tonight when Zoom meeting didn't work the way we thought. A mistake on my part. I didn't keep track of it. Apparently, we had an expired meeting set up. So now I know that I get to go out there and make sure it's corrected. But we have different kinds of sabotage that we run into. Saboteurs, self-inflicted stuff, you know, burning bridges, choices, inherited limitations, core belief systems that we have, situations and circumstances that actually are attracted and created when we have this certain things going on. The energy will actually do that. We have curses and miasms. We're going to talk about all this stuff here, but I wanted to at least go through the list with you real quick. Sometimes we have to figure out the types and sources of these curses and miasms. Health and handicap. Well, sometimes we're born with certain things, and sometimes we're in an accident which causes a particular handicap, or maybe we have a health issue that causes a limitation. One of the things that is interesting to me is how many people who are handicapped don't look at it as a handicap. Once again, it's a paradigm shift. And then we have dehydration. That's symbolic in there in this situation, where accidents due to desperation. Well, okay, I'm not sure exactly why I put accidents on there. But what happens is when you have a dehydration, which means it's a lack of something. It could be a body fluid, it could be water, but it could also be a lack of love. Or maybe it's a lack of confidence, that you're just so dehydrated that you're in a desperation mode. Saboteurs, ever hear of shooting yourself in the foot? I know somebody who actually did shoot themselves. They thought they had the chamber clear and they shot themselves. Fortunately, the brother of this man was there and he saved his life. He actually got a commendation from the police department, from the fire department, because he shot himself in the leg and he would have bled out. It was just a crazy thing. Well, but we do this quite frequently. We shoot ourselves in the foot, and this is a self-inflicted thing. With saboteurs, there's a number of different things that I've discovered. Of course, the first thing we think about is being stabbed in the back, thrown under the bus. There's all kinds of different terms that we have out there. But when somebody does that, you know, we think, oh yeah, they stabbed me in the back and I lost that job, or that manager didn't think of me very well after that point. And what happens is, physically there's no knife, but intellectually there is definitely a knife. In fact, I have a chart that I look at. Let me see if I can bring that chart up real quick here. We'll make it so you can see it a little bit better. Down here at this point right here, whoop, there we go. You'll see that I actually created a chart for the different kinds of sabotage that someone could cause to you. And when I first started, this was the chart I used all the time, not thinking that there was maybe another kind of sabotage. So what I normally do when I'm looking at this, and you can create any kind of chart you want. If you happen to be on the Ultimate Healer program, you'll have this chart. But you could just create a chart where I just put the body, the front and the back, with a grid over it, and then I put A, B, C, D, all the way to J, and then 1 to 10. And that helps me locate the place where somebody would have injured you. Strangely enough, if it's right here in the mid-back, these are the most common, right here. So that's an H3 and an H4 is where most people will stab you in the back. And then I look over here and I say, what kind of weapon did they use? When you see the replay, I'll zoom right in on these so you can see them a little bit better. You know, we start off, it could be a knife, it could be grenades, it could have been a cannon, it could have been a spear. What you're going to find is that sometimes you're in the wrong place at the wrong time and you get what we call friendly fire. I put that up here, wrong place and time. You just happen to be close enough and somebody threw a grenade or whatever and you got some shrapnel. That's a possibility on that. Being stabbed, thrown in a bus, shot in the foot, friendly fire. Here's a different kind. It's called educational. Now, lately I've been finding that sabotage can be from mom. So when I ask about sabotage, I always say, is this a male or female? Is this family? Is it friend? Is it an enemy? Is it a stranger? I kind of walk through just my normal stuff that I wander through. And if it says mom or dad, it's usually from something that they told you as a child. And then I'll find out, when did this happen? Because if the time frame, if we're looking at the time frames, usually you're pretty young. For example, I put up here, 2 + 2 = 5. Well, if your mom taught you that before you went to school, you can see where that would have sabotaged you in math at school. So sometimes it's a matter of what your dad does, by example, or your mom, or maybe it's their relationship and that type of thing there. That is the saboteur aspect of things. Are there other ones? Oh yeah, there's another one here. I had a person who, it was kind of like self-inflicted is what I look at it as. This person was trying to lose weight, so they had taken fen-phen. Now, if you remember fen-phen, you could lose weight really, really well, but it actually attacked your body. And so later on, when we found that she had sabotage and she was not able to release the weight, we went back and we found out it was the time frame where she had actually been taking fen-phen, and the body was still in the mode that was causing the problem. Another one, a young lady had an abortion. And doesn't matter the situation, but she took it very, very hard that she had to go through that process. And that actually messed with her fertility ability. And that was a self-sabotage. That was a choice she made at the time. She regretted it her whole life. And we released that traumatic situation, which included a psychic trauma from the tainted situation. There was some emotional resonances that were there in order to free her to allow her body to go ahead and become fertile again. Crazy stuff with sabotage. I like this picture. This is self-inflicted burning bridges, painting yourself into the corner. Sometimes you don't even realize that you're doing these kinds of things to yourself. Didn't put it on here, but we talked about it last time a little bit, and that was despair statements. These are statements that you've said to yourself that are not necessarily true, but yet they have affected you in your life. Let me see if I can find that real quick here, and I'll pop it over on the screen. Those of you who have had a session with me where we've talked about this, I literally have over 230 despair statements. In fact, let's just bring that up here. We'll just show you from this current slide here. There we go. Is that perfect? I keep learning new things about this stuff. So obviously we only see just a few things. We're seeing from 4, 5, 6, 7 on page 1 and only 3 over, and I believe there's like 4 of them. So let's look at this though. Here's in this 5 right here. I am gullible. I believe everything. I am handicapped. I am hard to live with. I am helpless by myself. I am hiding. I am in danger. I am incapable. Now, these don't even have to be true. But when they're in there, it's in your programming, and the subconscious says, oh, you want this to happen? And that's what makes this so hard to work with unless you know that they're there. But yet they're easily removed once we've identified them. This is another form of sabotage. Did you notice up here at the top, for those that are in the Ultimate Healer, I put the little blue tabs and the different colors so you now match up with your start charts. So let's move this out of the way here. So painting yourself into a corner and self-inflicted burning bridges, choices, those are things that we do, and sometimes we attract things into our lives because of that. Okay, so let me give you another example of self-sabotage. I was working with a young lady the other day who is struggling with relationships. She just has, in fact, we called it one accident after another. And she had just this last week been in another relationship and she wrecked her car. It was an accident. Somebody ran into the back of it and totaled her car. And I thought, oh my gosh, as we were going through this, we realized that as we were working with I was looking at the emotions of the actual accident, trying to figure out what do we need to release, because she was all traumatic about it. You know, her car was broken. She loved her car, and different things were going on in her life at that particular time. Well, we found out that this relationship that she just had that was ended was also an accident. And then we started looking at the different relationships that she'd had. It was the same thing as the car being rear-ended and giving it a totaling the car. I believe, quite frankly, that she attracted this accident into her life because it was very symbolic what was going on. Okay, so let's go to, here's our hidden monsters. This is the power of your imagination. Remember, we talked about these things a little bit. Power of the imagination, matter unorganized, quantum mechanics. This is where you can actually create that boogeyman or that monster under the bed or that creature that's been around. Just yesterday, we released another creature. And actually, the creature had been helpful to keep him from getting into problems in another situation. It actually came up under blessings, under trials. Invisible fences. We create these invisible fences. Bury a wire in your yard around the outside of the edge of your yard. And when the dog gets too close, shocks the dog, and pretty soon he learns not to go past that particular barrier. Well, the same type of thing happens to us. These are the hidden things that sometimes we have to go in and find. Now, in the Ultimate Healer, we do talk about that. It's under the entities chart where you can find the different kinds of entities that you're dealing with. One person that was working with entities, she was just being attacked, and we just kept releasing them, and her shields were up. Couldn't figure out how the entities were getting in. Eventually, we did establish that she was creating them, and they were coming from the inside. So once we established that fact, we talked a lot about how to not generate that fear that would bring in that kind of a entity against her. They were actually devils and demons and all kinds of good stuff there. Inherited and environment. I don't know how close this joke up here is, but I love just the fact that it was coming from a dad or a scoutmaster, and it was affecting these kids. Sins of the fathers. There are things that happen that actually will create a type of curse or a situation. Well, let's say you are in a situation where the father is maybe involved with drugs or some kind of criminal activity where they go to prison. That affects the kids. Their father's no longer available, or maybe the fathers go, or it could be the mothers. It can go any direction, but when that happens, sometimes that effect comes to you. I like Napoleon Hill. As I was growing, I read a lot of Napoleon Hill. Napoleon Hill was the man who wrote Think and Grow Rich. And one of the things he said in that book was, it doesn't matter your background. By the age of 16 to 18, you should have control of your own life. You should have enough to understand what needs to happen to make a difference in your life. Quit blaming other people. When you are born into this world, it's like your top of your head is open. And for 2 years, information just pours in. It's unfiltered. It takes in everything that's around it. And then at that point, what happens is filters start to be developed and created. So they start to be able to understand and make choices and based on the information that they have. Your life really is a matter of your own choices. Let's look at the curses real quick here. These are curses that I have found to affect us in our life. Sometimes these are self-inflicted. They could be inherited. It could be from many, many generations back. And you'll be surprised sometimes to see that maybe it's a curse of not letting go. I ran into that one. I thought that was pretty interesting. It went back 23 generations. And of course, we tracked it. We went, it was the father, then it was the mother, then it was the father. We didn't go back all 23. I usually go 4, and then at that point I ask, is there more than 10? And then I go, is it more than 15? I figure out how many generations back it goes. But in this situation, she just started laughing. And she goes, my mom's going to think this is so funny, because her dad never lets go of anything. And his mother was the same way. So her grandmother was exactly the same way. She goes, this goes back 23 generations. No wonder they have all these physical ailments, because they never let anything go. So when I find these things, I just go ahead with it, and I ask, is there a curse on somebody? Is it self-inflicted? Did it come from inherited? Was it from a situation? It could also come from a situation. Say you're in a situation where you lose your job because the company got bought out or the company went under. In a way, that could be kind of a curse on you. One that pops up very frequently is loneliness. Another one is isolation. Another one is invisibility. Some of these are more prominent than others. Another curse, gossip. I put poison and gossip together because they kind of happen at the same time. Here's another one, self-hate, stubbornness. There's all kinds of different things that come up. Now, the beauty of this is that once we've identified it, we can release it. And I do it if they're a Christian, then I say, in the name of Jesus Christ, who has come in the flesh, then I release the curse. If they are not Christian, then I say, in the name of the Creator, because you know what? The Creator is still God. That's where you need to go, and that helps us in that situation. So let's move on to the next one. Let's see what we got. Okay, here's some of the effects of sabotage. All kinds of blocks. If you take it and you don't change your paradigm about what's happening here and realize that this is an opportunity to grow, then a lot of times it'll block you. It could block you. There's two different, and you'll notice that I've got blocks here, and then on the right side I've got barriers or walls. It can also create those. You know what the difference between barriers and walls is? A wall keeps things out. It protects you. A barrier keeps you out. So sometimes you actually create barriers that don't allow you to move forward. So it's kind of interesting the way that that works, but that's what I'm intending on that. Hidden or limited vision, frequencies. A lot of times if you are in a situation of sabotage, a lot of times you're in the lower frequencies. So there's a story that I used to hear about people that were living in clouds of smoke, and it turned out that this particular story was these people were living inside this kind of like a chimney in a way, and one person started to climb up, and they got outside of the smoke and they looked over the edge, and there's this beautiful world out there. They didn't even know it existed because they lived down in the yucky stuff that we are constantly surrounded with. We are releasing these things. That's the beautiful thing about the emotion code and the body code, is that it allows us to ask questions of the subconscious. You don't have to have those. It just helps. We've got other things that you can always ask, and if you ask with, you got ideas and questions, the subconscious will give you an answer. But usually, sometimes it's really hard to see anything if you're on a low frequency. In some ways, when you pass on, if you this seems to be the case with most suicides. They're at that point in their head, they think that might be the best thing. They don't think it all the way through. And then the crazy thing is, when they commit suicide, they're still there. They're not, didn't just disappear. And a lot of times what happens is they go into the freak out mode, where they just realize that, oh my gosh, I've hurt my family. One of the things that I remember the most about one of the near-death experiences was this guy who had come, he was floating over, he could see inside these buildings and he could see people, but it seemed like there was like way too many people in there for that particular building and the size it was. And he asked the angel that was with him, and he said, what's going on there? He says, you're seeing both the people who are living and the people who are just spirits. And he saw this one young man who was chasing after his father, saying, oh, I didn't know it was going to hurt mom so much, who was taking care of his wife, because when his son committed suicide, that was the son, she became bedridden. And so he was constantly taking care of her. Well, he couldn't see anything but simply say, I'm so sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry, Dad. He just kept following and following and following. He never saw the opportunity to move to the light. I work with a lot of people who are earthbound. And you're going to find that too. As soon as you start working with people and the opportunity for advancement appears for the people who are dead, they're going to come to their relatives, and sometimes they're going to cause pain because they know that that'll cause them to go to somebody who can help them. And that's what's happening here. That explains a little bit about the hidden and limited vision. Don't wait till you die. You want to try and take care of this now. And as you rise in elevation, as you clear this stuff, you will rise and other things will come and they will appear. The effects of sabotage keeps you down there in the mud. Anxiety, depression, once again, it's a matter of vision. Isolation and loneliness, same thing. Acceptance of defeat. Those are some of the effects of sabotage. How do we get out of that? By identifying these different types of sabotage and recognizing them for what they really are as potential blessings. For every opposition, there's an equal and opportunity basically in the other direction.
For reaction, there's an equal and opposite reaction.
Exactly, and it's a matter of choice. Thank you, Harvetta. And that is one of the things that you need to remember is that you got to try and look at it from a different point of view, identify what it is, name it, write it down. And that's where we're going to the next one. Stabilize it by pinning it down. Now, Loretta was on here and we went to the Holistic Festival. And afterwards, we sat there for about 3 hours, I think, or at least 2 hours, and we talked about limiting beliefs. And by writing them down and actually putting them on these napkins that we had, we were able to tear them all up when we were done. And she took half of them, I took half of them. We flushed them away. And that's one of the things that you can do as far as being able to release this. Establishing what it has done for you, the effects and lessons learned. You know what? That's really why we're here, is to try and figure that stuff out. So the whole idea behind sabotage is to kind of turn it around, look at it from different angles, recognize the blessings that you got from having this sabotage, and then trying to figure out what you need to do to move on. So consolidate with your subconscious to be on the same page. Okay, adjusting your paradigm with reality. I find that a lot of times when we have to ask more questions, because we find an issue and we identify it and we say, is there something more? Do we need to know more? And if the body says no, that means you're pretty well consolidated with your subconscious. But if it says yes, then we have to go in and figure out what it is that the subconscious wants you to understand. And usually it's a paradigm shift. And then recognize your blessing for the empowerment. So releasing sabotage. Being grateful for the lessons given and learned, recognize the achievement of overcoming it, map out your path to adjustment and forward progress, and then let the stinking thing go. Let it go. Send it out of your life. Dissolve it. Shoot it. Put it in a boat. Sink it. I don't care what you do with it, but you got to get it, recognize it, let it go. And then ask for forgiveness for having hung on to it for so long. And move forward. Now, those of you who have a Christian background, we believe that Jesus Christ came and atoned for our sins, which means he's already paid for it. Why are you hanging on to it? So a lot of times you have to be willing to give it up and be able to move forward. I am going to be doing an entire workshop, sabotage workshop, in the near future in different locations in the country. So just know that that's something that's going to be coming up. It'll be something where we literally sit down and go over the same type of thing here, but we will have opportunities to do the releases right there and make it so that people can understand what needs to happen. Any questions at this time?
Where do I find the recordings? The recordings you've been doing. I went to the website. I couldn't really pinpoint it.
Okay, so if you go, and I'll walk you right through it. How's that? What you want to do is go to Healer's Resource, and it's going to take you to this website right here. Okay, this is the same one you'd have for Ultimate Healer. You get to see this beautiful thing going on here. So if you already have a login, then you just click on library. But if you've never done it, you click on the store, or down below here too. And you'll see that the MasterMind is offered right here. This class is currently full. So if you click on this for free, this is free, it will take you and you have to log in. Now, if you've never logged in before, it'll allow you to create that login. You have a login. Okay, so it'll come here, and there's my stuff that fills in. Well, sign up for free is what it's going to do. Now in my library, you're going to see the MasterMind class. So if you click on the MasterMind here, it's going to take you to the course itself. So you'll see there's an introduction to the course about your instructor. Here are 4 of the MasterMind classes that we've already put out there. And this one's going to come out here also. It'll be the one after this. So when you click on this, it'll take you to the actual edited version, and you'll see that it's 31 minutes. I saved you time. It'll walk you through the class, and I try and label them like this was the assessment class. So you're ready? And there's where that'll happen. You can watch these. So you can go back to see any one of these that are there. On this particular one here, there was actually an assessment, supposed to say chart, not card. I left the H out for some reason. But it still works, and you can download that from right there. That answer your question, Ricky?
Yes, yes. Thank you, Tom.
Same thing with your Ultimate Healer class. You can go right there too and get into that one. Have you been in there?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes,